So our theme this month is that you may prosper. And this week, my topic is that all there is? We began this series last week by talking about what prosperity looks like. That abundance comes in many different packages and in many different ways. So the way we remember that bottomless wellspring of creativity is to get into our glorious, unlimited, God-given mind. We remind ourselves that we're the creation of an infinitely powerful intelligence, and that God's consciousness is unlimited. We heard some discussion about that already this morning in Standing in the Light. We've been given the tools and the blueprints. The attention and the activity are up to us. And like anything else in life, we would do well to measure our progress when we are intent upon growing our prosperity consciousness. Which brings us to today's topic, is that all there is? Years ago, for those of you who go back as far as I do, will remember that Peggy Lee made that phrase famous when she sang the song title, Is That All There Is? I'm going to confess to you now that I always disliked that song. I guess I was meant to find science of mind and positive thinking. I had much too much a positive attitude to stay in the ordinary mind that believed that was all there was. However, it's in every one of us to be skeptical now and then. And let me give you an example out of my own experience. When I first took the Spiritual Center in San Diego in the year 2000, I bought a home in Rancho Bernardo. And behind my house was a hill, a slope, up to the house above me. And that slope was covered with bushes that were all gnarled and brambly and ugly. Acacia bushes, one of my neighbors explained to me, as if that meant anything to me. It really didn't. The leaves were kind of grayish. They were scraggly. And they just weren't at all attractive. The home was beautiful. What was this up on the back hill? So I hired a crew to come out and cut those branches back close to the ground so that they could regrow and be nicer looking. Now, it's a steep hill. I also thought that that would enable me to plant some other things on the hill, more attractive plants. But when the workmen made the first cuts on those bushes, we discovered that beneath the top layer of leaves, there was nothing but dead branches. There was no way we could just cut them back because there were 3 great, big, huge root balls at the very top of the hill. And all those dead branches came from those 3 root balls. So all we could do at that point was to remove everything. All the branches, cut the root balls back to ground level, and I won't tell you what else they did. They didn't tell me, I didn't ask, they just did, so that it wouldn't grow back.
I don't want to know.
No, you don't want to know, and neither did I. And believe it or not, after that, not a one of those root balls put out a single shoot. Never saw anything from them again. They were definitely ready to be done. But after all that work now, my slope is completely bare and even uglier. The crew that had worked 3 days to clear those bushes were no longer interested in going back up that hill to replant it. Because in addition to everything else, it was August and very, very hot. They'd had enough. So I hired 2 other men to replant the slopes with plants that grow low to the ground and that spread prolifically. We bought a succulent called red apple And the two of them climbed the slope and they set out 9 flats of those little plants. During the fall and the winter, I watered that slope faithfully. I had the Rainbird sprinkler system reactivated on the hill. I stood with a hose and watered the spots that the rainbirds didn't hit. And slowly but surely, those little plants began to grow and to spread. Suddenly, but when spring came around, so did everything else begin to grow and spread. One morning it occurred to me that the weeds were definitely benefiting more from all the water and the attention than the little red apple plants. And suddenly all I could see were weeds. They were taller, thicker, and much more widespread than those little plants. Now what should I do? Climbing the slope to clear the weeds meant stepping all over the plants. And the slope was steep, so it would have been easy to slip or to slide, which meant possibly damaging those little red apple plants. So I talked to 3 different companies before I finally found a gardener who said, "No problem. I'll bring a crew of 3 people in. We'll weed that hill in 1 day, and your plants will be fine." So I did just that. They cleaned that hill up in 1 day. They got all the weeds off of it and were so sure-footed and careful that not one red apple plant was damaged. I was really grateful. I kid you not. The next morning I walked out there to admire my beautiful slope with its pretty little red apple plants growing on it and stopped dead in my tracks. Hey, wait a minute. Is that all there is? And I spoke that out loud, I recall. With the weeds gone, there was a lot of dirt. Bare dirt. Sure, the plants were there and they were growing and spreading, but very slowly, and they started so small that even doubling was still not much coverage. But with the weeds gone, all I could see was the dirt, where the red apple plants had not yet spread. See how easy it is to focus on what we don't have or what we don't want? We all do it. That's the ordinary mind sneaking back in. The slope in my backyard became my practice that year. Every day I would go out there and I would look at the plants, not the dirt. And I would admire how pretty they were and how they were growing. When I watered, I would concentrate on the water hitting the plants, not the dirt between them. I would remind myself that they were there to cover the hill. Sometimes I would even do that out loud so that they heard it as well. And I would also remind myself that without the dirt, the plants wouldn't grow. That the dirt was beckoning them to join it in carpeting my hill. See the change of attitude and the change of focus to what I did choose rather than what I didn't want. So that slope became my practice field for recognizing abundance. I realized that I must focus on the plants if it was my intention that they cover the space. I realized that I must remember that what was underneath was the foundation for their growth, and not a lack or absence of something valuable. And I recognized that I had to be an active participant in that unfolding. I needed to provide water. I needed to provide fertilizer. And occasionally I needed to provide a pair of willing hands that would go remove the unwelcome weeds. Although I didn't consciously intend it, the story of that slope became a model for a lesson in abundance and prosperity for me. And you see, it didn't have anything to do with money. Money is one part of prosperity, but there are so many other facets of prosperity. Now, listen to the words of Dr. Stuart Grayson in his book, the 10 demandments of prosperity. It's been around for a long time, longer than Dr. Grayson, but I want you to think about that title, the 10 demandments of prosperity. And essentially, and he named it that, and if you'd known Dr. Grayson, you'd know why he named it, but it's very important for us to understand that when we put our word out, we make a demand upon the universe. That's not a bad thing. What that says is that I know that of which I speak for my highest and best good. I deserve it. I'm worthy of it. And so I make my demand for it. Here's what he says. An Olympic athlete has to train and work out daily just to keep in shape. A magnificent Steinway concert grand piano needs to be tuned after each performance. A Ferrari or a Maserati or any other sophisticated racing car requires more maintenance and servicing than a workday model that's used solely for transportation. A beautiful garden filled with prized flowers needs to be constantly watched and tended so that the weeds don't interfere with the flowers as they grow. Prosperity is a spiritual idea of excellence. I love that phrase. That's a great affirmation. For me, prosperity is a spiritual idea of excellence. It's a high quality of consciousness. And like any form of excellence or superiority, it requires time and love and care. In order to keep your prosperity consciousness working for you, you must watch your thoughts and your actions and tend to your spiritual needs. Dr. Grayson, speaking those words. Those are the beautiful thoughts from this founding minister of our New York City. It's now called Center for Spiritual Living. At the time Dr. Grayson was there, it was called the New York City Church of Religious Science. You see, when any one of us utters these words, is that all there is? I can assure you, that's all there is. That's all there is for us in that moment. But since every moment is a now moment, we can change that idea, we can change that awareness, we can change that intention in the very next moment. We're not required to drag any concept of limitation into the next moment. That's a choice. To drag it or drop it. We can choose to, but knowing that we don't have to drag it forward, why would we? We can release it because it no longer serves us. Personally, I think the only reason any person would consider or choose limitation over abundance and prosperity is because the concept of limitless is just that, limitless. And our ordinary mind cannot really grasp the concept of limitless. We have to be willing to recognize that God is not some grand man of the heavens keeping a list of accounts payable and accounts receivable. That's what an ordinary mind might think. We have to be willing to give up the idea that we can fully grasp or comprehend abundance, get our arms around it, so to speak. We have to be willing to stretch farther than our arms can reach, farther than our eyes can see, farther than our thoughts can articulate. Because this is big stuff. This is infinite, cosmic stuff. We have to be willing, as Eric Butterworth says, to accept that God is the transcendental whole of things of which you are an individualized part. Which means if you look around the room, so is everyone else. If you look around the island, so is everyone else. If you look around the planet, so is everyone else. See, the whole universe of infinite substance is centered in you. The affirmation, I think it was the affirmation that you did, or the opening treatment, and she didn't know this was in the talk. In fact, when she prepared for that, it wasn't in the talk. But she used that phrase of the universe is individualized in you. You are its center, whose circumference is nowhere. Did any of you wonder what she was saying when she mentioned that? Whose circumference is nowhere? Actually, what that means is that it is out to infinity. It has no limit. But the center of it is always where I am in any given moment. And that's true for every one of us. When you're able to free yourself from the sense of a God up there, which is out there, not in here, when you're able to free yourself from that, you light the fire of awareness of the presence within you. It's not that you are created by God. You are that part of God expressing by means of you. What a wonderful concept. God by means of me. Individualized. Unique. And prosperity comes from a consciousness which unfolds from within. It's stepping out of that ordinary mind that sets all those limits. Actually, a lot of the time we call it the monkey mind, because it just chatters and chatters and chatters, and most of what it says isn't worth listening to. And the sooner you stop listening to it, the greater your consciousness grows at a higher level of appreciation of who and what you truly are. So, and that's called aligning with infinite mind. Ooh, how does that feel? First few times you think about that, it could be scary. But aligning with infinite mind is recognizing that all that I am is as a result of that creation. So when we do that, we're no longer inclined to wonder, is that all there is? Because we have just accepted God's unbounded consciousness into our own. I want to address one other thing about the unlimited extent of prosperity. When I was a first-year student in Science of Mind, I remember being so excited and captivated by the results of spiritual mind treatment, a couple of which you heard in Standing in the Light this morning, when things manifested in such an easy way and surprisingly so that they exceeded the initial intention. So one night in Science of Mind class, the minister asked if anyone wanted to share what was happening in their lives as a result of spiritual mind treatment. Teacher, I have something to share. And when she called on me, I announced that so many good things were coming my way, I almost felt guilty about it. Ever heard that from anybody before? Ever spoken those words yourself before? Oh, things are so good, I almost feel guilty. Well, when pressed to explain what I meant by that, I said that I felt like I might be getting more than my fair share. Boy, I had a long way to go, didn't I? Needless to say, that became the topic of discussion for the balance of that class that night. When we believe in limitation, we're saying that there is somehow an end to prosperity. When we believe in limitation, we're saying that there isn't enough abundance to go around. When we believe in limitation, we are saying that what there is of abundance must be portioned out, perhaps earned by some set of rules or regulations. When we believe in limitation, we're saying we may not be worthy of receiving, quote, more than our fair share, quote, whatever that is. So let's remember, there is always enough and more to go around. Creative spirit is always at work. always at work. Its productivity is unending. How could there be limits? So let's remember that the only time we are not worthy of being, well, first of all, let's remember we're an indivisible part of Creative Spirit's work, and as such are not inherently limited in our receiving. The only time we are not worthy of being in the flow of Creative Spirit's bounty is when we ourselves make that determination and declare ourselves unworthy, or don't declare ourselves worthy. I am worthy. I accept. I deserve. And if any one of those words makes you nervous, then that's the first spiritual practice. To learn to accept, I am worthy. I am deserving. I am accepting. So let's remember the way we open ourselves to an even greater flow of love, success, money, health in our lives is by circulating the thing we desire the most. Hoarding, coveting, hiding your treasures causes them to shrivel and wilt and lose vitality. Your treasures are meant to be circulated. That causes them to thrive and flourish and grow. If you can give away that which you treasure most, you're ready to receive an even greater amount. Because your desire to share it enhances and underlines its value. Well, that's all there is for today. But no talk about prosperity would be complete without wise words from Charles Fillmore, the founder of the Unity Movement, which is also a metaphysical, spiritual organization in the world. Here's what Dr. Fillmore said. God is the source of a mighty stream of abundance and substance, and you are a tributary of that stream, a channel of expression. I love that, a channel of expression. God expressing by means of me, by means of you, by means of each of us. Blessing the substance increases its flow. If your money supply is low, or your wallet seems empty, I think this is so cute, take it in your hands and bless it. Whatever's in it, bless it. See it filled with living substance ready to become manifest. As you prepare your meals, bless the food with the thought of spiritual substance. When you dress, bless your garments and realize you are constantly clothed with God's substance. The more conscious or aware you become of the presence of the living substance, the more it will manifest for you. And the richer will become the common good of all. Identify yourself with substance, and you will soon begin to rejoice in the ever-present bounty of God showing up right where you are. So, Dr. Fillmore said, go forth and be prosperous. And so it is.